Jacob. I may be autistic, but I can't tell you what day of the week your mother's 32nd birthday fell on. I can't do logarithms in my head. I can't look at a patch of sod and tell you it has 6,446 individual blades of grass. On the other hand, I could tell you anything you ever wanted to know about lightning, polymerase, chain reactions, famous movie quotes, and lower crustaceous sauropods. I memorized the periodic table without even trying. I taught myself how to read Middle Egyptian, and I helped my calculus teacher fix his computer. I could talk forever about friction ridge detail and fingerprint analysis and whether said analysis is an art or a science. Parentheses, for example, DNA of identical twins is identical. We know that based on scientific analysis. But the fingerprints of identical twins differ in their Galton details. Which evidence would you rather have if you were a prosecutor? But I digress. Close parentheses. I suppose these talents would make me a hit at a cocktail party if A, I drank, which I don't, or B, I had any friends to invite me to a party, cocktail or not. My mother has explained it to me this way. Imagine what it's like to have someone with an intense stare come up to you and start talking about medium velocity impact blood spatter patterns caused by objects moving between 1.5 and 7.5 meters per second, and how they differ from high velocity impact spatter from gunshots or explosives. Or even worse, imagine being the person talking and not getting the hint when the victim of your conversation is desperately trying to escape. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome long before it came the mental health disorder du jour, overused by parents to describe their bratty kids that people think they're super geniuses instead of simply antisocial. To be honest, most kids in my school know what Asperger's is now, thanks to some candidate on America's Next Top Model. So many people have mentioned her to me that they must think we're related. As for myself, I try not to say the word out loud. Asperger's, doesn't it sound like a grade C cut of meat, donkey on the barbecue? I live with my mother and my brother Theo. The fact that we emerged from the same gene pool is mind-boggling to me, because we could not be more different from each other if we actively attempted it. We look like polar opposites. His hair is fine and so blonde it could pass for silver. Mine is dark and gets bushy if I do not have it cut religiously every 3 weeks. Parentheses, actually, part of the reason I get it cut every 3 weeks is that 3 is a good safe number, unlike 4, for example, and the only way I can handle someone touching my hair is if I know it's coming in advance. Close parentheses. Theo is always caught up in what other people think of him, while I already know what people think of me. That I'm the weird kid who stands too close and doesn't shut up. Theo listens to rap almost exclusively, which gives me a headache. He skateboards as if the wheels are attached to the bottoms of his feet, and I do mean that as a compliment, since I can barely walk and chew gum simultaneously. He puts up with a lot, I suppose. I get upset if plans don't work out, or if something in my schedule changes, and sometimes I just can't control what happens. I go all Hulk, screaming, swearing, hitting things. I haven't ever hit Theo, but I've thrown things at him and have wrecked some of his things, most notably a guitar that my mother then made me pay for in increments for the next 3 years of my life. Theo also is the one who suffers the brunt of my honesty. Case in point 1. Theo walks into the kitchen wearing jeans so low that his underwear is showing, an oversized sweatshirt and some weird metal around his neck. Theo, sup? Me, yo, homie, maybe you didn't get the memo, but we live in suburbia, not the hood. Is it Tupac Appreciation Day or something? I tell my mother we have nothing in common, but my mother insists that will change. I think she's crazy. I don't have any friends. The bullying started in kindergarten when I got my glasses. The teacher made a popular boy wear fake glasses so I'd have someone to connect with, but as it turned out, he didn't really want to talk about whether Archaeopteryx should be categorized as a prehistoric bird or a dinosaur. Needless to say, that friendship lasted less than a day. By now, I've gotten used to kids telling me to leave, to sit somewhere else. I never get called on the weekends. I just don't get the social hints that other people do. So if I'm talking to someone in class and he says, "Man, is it 1 o'clock already?" I look at the clock and tell him that yes, it is 1 o'clock already. When in reality, he's trying to find a polite way to get away from me. I don't understand why people never say what they mean. It's like immigrants who come to a country and learn the language, but are completely baffled by idioms. Parentheses, seriously, how could anyone who isn't a native English speaker, quote unquote, get the picture, so to speak, and not assume it has something to do with a photo or a painting? close parentheses. For me, being in social situations, whether that's school or Thanksgiving dinner or the line at the movies, is like moving to Lithuania when you haven't studied Lithuanian. If someone asks me what I'm doing for the weekend, I can't respond as easily as Theo would, for example. I'll stumble over how much information is too much, and so instead of giving a blow-by-blow description of my future plans, I'll rely on someone else's words. Doing my best to near a taxi driver impression, I'll say, "You talking to me?" Mind you, it's not just my peers that I misunderstand. Once my health teacher had to take a phone call in the main office, and she told the class, "Don't move, don't even breathe." Normal kids ignored the statement. A few goody two-shoes were quietly at their desks. And me? I sat like a statue, with my lungs on fire, until I was on the verge of passing out. I used to have a friend. Her name was Alexa, and she moved away in 7th grade. After that, I decided to treat school like an anthropological study. I tried to cultivate an interest in topics that normal kids talked about, but it was so boring. Case in point 2. Girl, hey, Jacob, isn't this the coolest MP3 player? Me, it was probably made by Chinese kids. Girl, you want a sip of my slushy? Me, sharing drinks can give you mono, so can kissing. Girl, I'm going to go sit somewhere else. Can you blame me for trying to jazz up conversations with my peers a little by talking about topics like Dr. Henry Lee's take on the Lacey Peterson murder? Eventually, I gave up engaging in mundane chats. Following a discussion about who was going out with whom was as hard for me as cataloging the mating rituals of a nomadic tribe in Papua New Guinea. My mother says sometimes I don't even try. I say I try all the time, and I keep getting rejected. I'm not even sad about it, really. Why would I want to be friends with kids who are nasty to people like me anyway? There are some things I really can't stand. 1, the sound of paper being crumpled. I can't tell you why, but it makes me feel like someone's doing that to all my internal organs. 2, too much noise or flashing lights. 3, having plans change. 4, missing Crime Busters, which is on the USA Network at 4:30 every day, thanks to the wonders of syndication. Even though I know all 114 of the episodes by heart, watching them daily is as important to me as taking insulin would be to a diabetic. My whole day is planned around it, and if I can't have my fix, I get cheeky. 5, when my mother puts my clothes away, I keep them in rainbow order, Roy G. Biv, and the colors can't touch. She does her best, but the last time she completely forgot about indigo. 6, if someone else takes a bite of my food, I have to cut off the part that his or her saliva has touched before I can eat any more of it. 7, loose hair. It freaks me out, which is why mine is military short. 8, being touched by someone I don't know. 9, food with membranes like custards or foods that explode in your mouth like peas. 10, even numbers. 11, when people call me retarded, which I am not. 12, the color orange. It means danger, and there's no rhyme for it in English, which makes it suspicious. Parentheses, Theo wants to know why I can tolerate things that are silver then, but I won't even rise to the argument. Close parentheses. I have spent much of my 18 years learning how to exist in a world that is occasionally orange, chaotic, and too loud. In between classes, for example, I wear headphones. I used to wear this great pair that made me look like an air traffic controller, but Theo said everyone made fun of me when they saw me in the hall, so my mother convinced me to use earbuds instead. I hardly ever go to the cafeteria because A, there's no one for me to sit with, and B, all those conversations crossing each other feels like knives on my skin. Instead, I hang out in the teacher's room, where if I happen to mention that Pythagoras did not really discover the Pythagorean theorem, parentheses, the Babylonians used it thousands of years before Pythagoras was even a seductive gleam in his Grecian parents' eyes, close parentheses. They do not look at me as if I have grown a second head. If things get really bad, pressure helps, like lying under a pile of laundry or a weighted blanket. A blanket with little poly pellets inside make it heavier, because the deep touch sensory stimulation calms me down. One of my therapists, a Skinner aficionado, got me to relax to Bob Marley songs. When I get upset, I repeat words over and over and talk in a flat voice. I close my eyes and I ask myself, what would Dr. Henry Lee do? I don't get into trouble because rules are what keep me sane. Rules mean that the day is going to go exactly the way I'm predicting it to be. I do what I'm told, and I just wish everyone else would do it too. We have rules in our house. 1, clean up your own messes. 2, tell the truth. 3, brush your teeth twice a day. 4, don't be late for school. 5, take care of your brother. He's the only one you've got. The majority of these rules come naturally to me, well, except for brushing my teeth, which I hate doing, and taking care of Theo. Let's just say my interpretation of rule number 5 doesn't always synchronize with Theo's interpretation. Take today, for example. I included him in a starring role in my crime scene, and he got furious. He was cast as a perpetrator. How could he not see that as the highest form of flattery? My psychiatrist, Dr. Moon Murano, often asks me to rate anxiety-producing situations on a scale of 1 to 10. Case in point 3. Me. My mom went out to the bank and said she was going to be back in 15 minutes, and when it got to 17 minutes, I started to panic. And then when I called her, she didn't pick up her cell, and I was sure she was lying dead in a ditch somewhere. Dr. Moon, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did that make you feel? Me, a 9. In parentheses, no, it was really a 10, but that's an even number, and saying it out loud would make my anxiety level blow off the chart. Close parentheses. Dr. Moon, can you think of a solution that might have worked better than calling 911? Me, doing my best share from Moonstruck impression. Snap out of it. I rate my days too, although I haven't told this to Dr. Moon yet. High numbers are good days, low numbers are bad days, and today is a 1 between my fight with Theo and then the absence of the free sample aid at the grocery store. Parentheses, in my defense, I have worked out an algorithm to predict what she's going to serve, and maybe I shouldn't have been upset if it was the first Saturday. I wouldn't have been upset if it was the first Saturday of the month when she hands out vegetarian items, but today was a dessert day for Ash Shakes. Close parentheses. I have been in my room since we got home. I bury myself under my covers and put a weighted blanket on top of that. I shut the Sheriff on my iPod on repeat and listen to that one song until 4:30 when it is time to watch Crime Busters and I have to go into the living room where the TV is. The episode is number 82, one of my top 5 ever. It involves a case where one of the CSI investigators, Rihanna, doesn't show up for work. It turns out she's taken hostage by a man racked with grief over his wife's recent death. Rihanna leaves behind clues for the rest of the team to solve, to lead them to where she's being kept. Naturally, I figure out the conclusion long before the rest of the CSI team does. The reason I like the episode so much is that they actually got something wrong. Rihanna gets dragged to a diner by her kidnapper and leaves a coupon for her favorite clothing store underneath her finished plate. Her colleagues find it and need to prove it's actually hers. They process it for prints using a small particle reagent followed by ninhydrin, when in reality you're supposed to use ninhydrin first. It reacts to the amino acid and then is followed by the small particle reagent, which reacts with fats. If you use the small particle reagent first, like they did in the episode, it would ruin the porous surface for the ninhydrin procedure. When I spotted the error, I wrote to the producers of Crime Busters. They sent me back a letter and an officially licensed t-shirt. The t-shirt doesn't fit me anymore, but I still keep it in my drawer. After watching the episode, my day definitely improves from a 1 to a 3. Hey, my mother says, poking her head into the living room. How are you doing? Okay, I reply. She sits down beside me on the couch. Our legs are touching. She's the only person I can stand having close to me. If it were anyone else, I would have moved away a few inches by now. So, Jacob, she says, I just want to point out that you did in fact survive the day without the free food sample. It's times like this I'm glad I don't look people in the eye. If I did, surely they would die on the spot from the contempt shooting out of mine. Of course I survived, but at what cost? Teachable moment, my mother explains, and she pats my hand. I'm just saying. Frankly, my dear, I murmur, I don't give a damn. My mother sighs. Dinner at 6, Rhett, she says, even though it's always at 6 and even though my name is Jacob. At different times, the media have posthumously diagnosed certain famous people with Asperger's. Here's just a sampling. 1. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. 2. Albert Einstein. 3. Andy Warhol. 4. Jane Austen. 5. Thomas Jefferson. I am 99% sure not a single one of them had a meltdown in a grocery store and wound up breaking a whole shelf of relish and pickle jars. Dinner proves to be a painful affair. My mother seems driven to start a conversation, although neither Theo nor I is inclined to hold up the other end of it. She's just gotten another packet of letters from the Burlington Free Press, and sometimes she reads them out loud at dinner, and we make up politically incorrect responses that my mother would never in a million years write in her advice column. Case in point 4. Dear Auntie M, my mother-in-law insists on cooking roast beef every time my husband and I come to visit, even though she knows that I'm a lifelong vegetarian. What should I do next time it happens? Steamed in South Royalton. Dear Steamed, turn up your nose at her and walk away. Sometimes the questions she gets are really sad, like the woman whose husband had left her and who didn't know how to call her kids, or the mom dying of breast cancer who wrote a letter for her baby daughter to read when she grew up about how she wished she could have been there for her daughter's high school graduation, her engagement, her first child. Mostly, though, the questions come from a bunch of idiots who made bad choices. How do I get my husband back now that I realize I shouldn't have cheated on him? Try being faithful, lady. What's the best way to win back a friend you've hurt with a nastier mark? Don't say it in the first place. I swear, sometimes I can't believe my mother gets paid to state the obvious. Tonight she holds up a note from a teenage girl. I can tell because the ink of the pen is purple and because the I in Auntie M has a heart over it where the dot should be. Dear Auntie M, she reads, and just like always, I picture a little old lady wearing a bun and sensible shoes, not my own mother. I like a guy who already has a girlfriend. I know he likes me because C-U-Z, spelled C-U-Z. Gosh, don't they teach you how to spell these days? No, I answer. They teach us to use spell check. Theo looks up from his plate long enough to grunt in the direction of the grape juice. I know he likes me because, my mother edits, he walks me home from school and we talk for hours on the phone, and yesterday I couldn't take it anymore and I kissed him and he kissed me back. Oh, please, someone get this girl a comma. Then she frowns at the loose leaf paper. He says we can't go out, but we can be friends with benefits. Do you think I should say yes? Sincerely, Burlington Buddy. My mother glances at me. Don't all friends have benefits? I stare at her blankly. Theo, she asks. It's a saying, he mutters. A saying that means what exactly? Theo's face turns bright red. Just Google it. Just tell me. So when a guy and a girl who aren't going out hook up, alright? My mother considers this. You mean like have sex? Among other things. And then what happens? I don't know, Theo says. They go back to ignoring each other, I guess. My mother's jaw drops. That is the most demeaning thing I've ever heard. This poor girl shouldn't just tell that guy to go jump in a lake. She ought to slash all 4 of his car tires. And suddenly she pins her gaze on Theo. You haven't treated a girl like that, have you? Theo rolls his eyes. Can't you be like other mothers and just ask me if I'm smoking weed? Are you smoking weed? She says. No. Do you have friends with benefits? Theo pushes back from the table and stands up in one smooth move. Yeah. I have thousands. They line up outside the front door. Haven't you noticed them lately? He dumps his plate in the sink and runs upstairs. My mother reaches for a pen she's tucked into her ponytail. Parentheses, she always wears a ponytail because she knows how I feel about loose hair swishing around her shoulders. Close parentheses. And begins to scrawl a response. Jacob, she says, be a sweetheart and clear the table for me, will you? And off goes my mother, champion of the confused, doyen of the dense, saving the world one letter at a time. I wonder what all those devoted readers would think if they knew that the real Auntie M had one son who was practically a sociopath and another who was socially impractical. I'd like a friend with benefits, although I'd never admit that to my mother. I'd like a friend, period. For my birthday last year, my mother bought me the most incredible gift ever, a police scanner radio. It operates by receiving frequencies that regular radios cannot, ones assigned by the federal government in the VHF and UHF range, above the FM stations, and which are used by police, fire, and rescue crews. I always know when the highway patrol is sending out the sanding trucks before they arrive. I get the special weather alerts when a nor'easter is coming. But mostly I listen to the police and emergency calls because even in a town as small as Townsend, you get a crime scene every now and then. Since Thanksgiving alone, I have gone to 2 crime scenes. The first is a break-in at a jewelry store. I rode my bike to the address I heard in the scanner, found several officers swarming the storefront for evidence. It was the first time I got to see spray wax being used on snow to cast a footprint, a definite highlight. The second crime scene was not really a crime scene. It was the house of a kid who goes to my school who's a real jerk to me. His mother had called 911, but by the time they got there, she was standing at the front door, her nose still bleeding, saying that she didn't want to press charges against her husband. Tonight, I've just gotten into my pajamas when I hear a code on the scanner that is different from any I've ever heard, and I've heard plenty. 10:52, ambulance needed. 10:50, motor vehicle accident. 10:13, civilians present and listening. 10:40, false alarm, premises secure. 10:54, livestock on highway. Right now, though, I hear this. 10:100, which means dead body. I don't think I've ever gotten dressed so quickly in my life. I grab a composition notebook, even though it's a used one, because I don't want to waste any time, and I scroll down the address that keeps getting mentioned on the scanner. Then I tiptoe downstairs. With any luck, my mother is already asleep and won't even know I'm gone. It's bitterly cold out, and there are about 2 inches of snow on the ground. I'm so excited about the crime scene that I'm wearing sneakers instead of boots. The wheels of my mountain bike skid every time I go around a turn. The address is a state highway, and I know I've reached the right spot because there are 4 police cars with their flashing blues on. There is a wooden stake with police tape, yellow, not orange, fluttering in the wind, and a visible trail of footprints. An abandoned car, a Pontiac, sits on the side of the road covered in ice and snow. I take out my notebook and write, vehicle has been abandoned for at least 12 hours, pre-storm. I duck into the edge of the woods as another police car arrives. This one is unmarked and ordinary, except for the domed police light magnetically affixed to the top. The man who gets out of it is tall and has red hair. He is wearing a black overcoat and heavy boots. On one of his hands is the Dora the Explorer band-aid. I write this in my notebook too. Captain, an officer says, coming out from between the trees. He's dressed in uniform with heavy gloves and boots too. Sorry to call you in. The captain shakes his head. What have you got? A jogger found a body in the woods. Guy's half naked and there's blood all over him. Who the hell goes jogging at night in the dead of winter? I follow them into the woods, careful to stay in the shadows. There are searchlights illuminating the area around the body so that the evidence can be fully recorded. The dead man is lying on his back. His eyes are open. His pants are gathered around his ankles, but he is still wearing his underwear. The knuckles of his hands are bright red with blood, as are the bottoms of his palms and his knees and calves. His jacket is unzipped, and he's missing 1 shoe and 1 sock. All around him, the snow is pink. Holy crap, the captain says. He kneels down and snaps on a pair of rubber gloves that he takes from his pocket. He examines the body up close. I hear 2 more sets of footsteps, and another man steps into the pool of light, escorted by a uniformed officer. The uniformed officer takes 1 look at the dead guy, goes totally pale, and throws up. Jesus H, the other man says. Hey, Chief, the captain replies. Suicide or homicide? I don't know yet. Sexual assault seems like a given, though. Rich, the guy's covered in blood from head to toe, and he's lying here in his tidy whites. You think he got sexually assaulted and then committed harikiri? The police chief snorts. I know I don't have the vast detective experience you do after 15 years on the job in the metropolis of Townsend, but I look down at the list in my notebook. What would Dr. Henry Lee do? Well, he'd examine the wounds up close. He'd analyze why there was only superficial blood, that pink transfer on the snow without any dripping or spatter. He'd note the footprints in the snow, 1 set that matches the lone sneaker on the victim's foot, and the other set that has been matched to the jogger who found the body. He'd ask why, after a sexual assault, the victim would still be wearing his underwear if other items of clothing were still removed. I'm so cold, I'm shaking. I stomp my frozen feet in their sneakers. Then I look down at the ground, and suddenly everything's crystal clear. Actually, I say, stepping out of my hiding place, you're both wrong.